Hi, I'm Spencer Ziegler.
Hi, I'm Mellisa Smith, and welcome to Data Lit, a podcast for educators by educators. So, Spencer, do you know what game was first launched in the UK and Canada before being launched in the US? And it is named after the Swahili word for build.
For build.
Mm-hmm.
I'm staring right at it, but for the sake of our podcast listeners, I'm going to throw out and say that it is Hungry Hungry Hippos.
No. No.
What is it?
It is
Enlighten us.
Jenga.
Jenga. Okay.
Jenga.
Oh, it's a good game. Good game.
Yep. So in this episode, guys, we are going to actually be playing Jenga. But let me give you some background information. So back in July of this year, 2024, the National Center for Education Statistics published this report called A Forum Guide to Data Literacy. And it was shared with us. And it was meant to, in the guide, they have instructions about data literacy, why it's important, why you need to share it with various stakeholders. And after Spencer and I read it, we found that there were many gems worth sharing with our listeners. And so since this is our 5th season, it might be a great time for us to kind of go back to our foundation about, what is data literacy, and give our listeners, in case we have any new ones who didn't start with us in the first season, some ideas about data literacy. So during the episode, we're going to be playing Jenga. So if you hear some slight pauses, it's because we're trying to be strategic about what to pull and what not to pull, and with the hope that it doesn't fall apart in the very first one.
Yes. Okay, so why Jenga then, as we're talking about data literacy?
So when we were thinking about this, data literacy is the foundation. And so when we thought about interesting ways to bring this information to you, what else has building blocks than a Jenga game? So that's why we started with Jenga, because as we will discuss later in the episode, there are these aspects to data literacy that are the foundational blocks, so to speak, about data literacy. And so that's one of the reasons why we picked Jenga as a introduction to getting you hooked on talking about data literacy.
And if you pull one out, the
There's
structure
a chance.
might not be
There's
able
a
to
chance, yes.
stand up. Yep.
So-
Okay, got it.
All right. So let's start with defining data literacy. So in the report, they talked about data literacy and is the ability to understand and use data effectively and ethically, which I think is new because we kind of talked about this before, understanding and using data. But I think what is new for us, and I'd like to highlight for our listeners, is this ethically part, using data effectively and ethically to inform decisions. And it's composed of these specific skills and knowledge base that enable stakeholders or anyone using the data to transform data into information and ultimately take action. In the past, our definition typically tended to be around the being able to use data and understand data. But I like this extension piece here about the it's understanding, why do we need to understand to transform data from information into something that you can actually use and do something about.
Yeah. And I also like how they touch on that might vary by stakeholder, and that's something that we're going to get into next episode, actually.
Yeah, I like that. So, Spencer, why does it matter us looking at data literacy? Why do you think it matters?
Well, I guess that kind of goes back to the Jenga kind of thing, because if you're missing one of these elements, we're going to talk through six of these building blocks, these bricks. It doesn't matter how strong and secure you are elsewhere, the whole thing might fall apart, might tumble down, and it'll be less amusing than when you're playing a game and someone gets to shout Jenga.
I also find too with data literacy, it's kind of like understanding math, where sometimes I find that we have a tendency to use data as a power leverage tool.
Yeah.
So I know stuff about data and you don't. And so I think it really is important for us to improve our data literacy skills, right? And everybody doesn't need the same level of skills, but definitely it is important for us to understand data because there is data all around us, right? When you think of, remember we did that episode about coming out of the pandemic and what did we learn? And there's so much information around us, so much data. And we have to kind of make sense of all of that information. So it definitely is important for us to take some time to revisit data literacy and why it's important, because it's always around us and we have to kind of use it and make sense of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Every decision is a database one. The question is whether the data you're using is valid and reliable and helpful for that. Or is it the data that's coming from my implicit biases or something like we'll talk about later?
Yeah, I like that. For me, this document that they sent or put out felt like a call to action. I love a lot of the words that they use about, again, moving from the admiration and just looking at data, but doing something with it, which is the whole point of data.
Yep. And we have a copy in the show notes for our listeners to dive into.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
So, we've alluded to these foundational blocks of data literacy, and they describe it as these blocks make up the data literacy landscape. And so there are 6 of them. It's data quality, metadata. I think Star Trek for some strange reason. I don't know why. Yeah, the third one is data privacy, data ethics, data governance, and then last but not least, data visualization.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with data quality.
Yeah. And after each one of us is going to take out one of the blocks and see who wins.
All right.
Okay. You're first. I see you eyeing the
I'm trying to remember. It's been years. I'm trying to figure out, do you start from the beginning to the bottom? Okay, anyway.
Data quality. You can't do top 3 rows. You got to leave those because that's kind of cheating. Okay. I'm not sure if that's general rules, but that's Ziegler house rules.
Okay, all right. So data quality. So data quality is about being able to determine the quality of data. Sounds pretty simple. But when we talk about the quality of data, the things that we're trying to think about is when we look at a data set, is it complete?
Yeah.
Right? Does it have all of the requirements, all of the elements? Is it valid? That's really important in our work. Is the data valid? Is it accurate? So, making sure that there are no known errors. Is it reliable? Again, if data is supposed to be used to do something, you want it to be reliable. Is it useful? Now, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because we always tend to talk about data as all data is useful, but maybe it's useful for some and not others.
Yeah.
Or to think of the usefulness when we're trying to explain data. If they have to make a decision, then you have to make it useful. So, and that is part of the data quality elements, again, making sure that it is relevant to the folks that are using, and then making sure that the data is timely. Sometimes that's not always within our control, but one of the quality elements is making sure that people have the data kind of when they need it to make decisions. So, Spencer, what are your thoughts about data quality when you read about this?
So this made me kind of think back to some of the conversations we were having with the pandemic. I think that forced us to kind of inspect some of these things, and because I think there's a temptation to have this a false binary of it either is there or not. There's that neglect to probability, where the fact is each of these components within here, the complete, valid, accurate, and all those, it is a spectrum. And overall, the data quality is a spectrum. And there's never going to be a data point that is 100% or 0%. So you always need to be thinking of, with these components, just where does it fall? And then what do you do with that when you're making those decisions?
Yeah. Another thing that I think about sometimes is there is an assumed quality that we sometimes think about with data. Like we get data, and I think it's because of my work here in our department that I'm always starting like those are sort of the things that go through my head when I'm presented with data, make sure and to check, checking for quality. Whereas I think for other people, they get it and they assume that it is quality and they move forward. But taking the time to always ensure that when we get data in front of us to do these sort of things, as much as it is reasonable or for a lay person to do, like, is it complete, valid? Starting to ask those sort of questions to make sure that, okay, if all of those things are true, now I can move forward with the data.
Right. Yeah. Well put. Okay. So you're gonna take a block. No, I wouldn't do that one. That seems like a huge mistake. Okay. She's going with one of the middle pieces.
I think that's how you're supposed to do it.
Yep. Yeah. You can walk around. Yep. You got it. Ooh, one of them was shifting. Pretty good. Okay, Mellisa. No, then you put it on top. That's the other. That's the other part of it. Kind of tower keeps building. Okay.
All right. What's metadata?
I'm very curious how this translates to an audio medium. Us playing a game that they can't see.
We will see it.
Okay, metadata. So that is the structured information that describe and explain data, making it easier to find, access, use across systems, and reuse all that. I kind of thought of this as kind of the context behind the data. like where it's stored, how it's collected, how it's sourced, all those kind of things there, because that might make a difference. So, for instance, I don't know if there's, let's say, you're doing some kind of implementation data. You're rolling out a new curriculum or something like that. And you're looking at usage data. Looking at the metadata of whether this was collected through like a rigorous walkthrough or whether it's self-reported, that might be something worth considering when you're looking at that, 73% or something like that, looking into that metadata.
Because those things make a difference, right?
Yeah, yeah. My head also went to so we have new science tests this year, right?
Yeah.
So looking at the, 23, 24, the fifth grade science EOG versus the 24, 25, that's not apples to apples. You want to kind of consider that metadata to figure out actually it's different tests. There's kind of different things going on.
Correct.
So kind of digging deep into that contextual information to figure out what to do with it.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
What's your piece?
Okay. I'm kind of at an odd angle. I have to use my left hand.
Don't start to make excuses as to why.
Planting the seeds. Okay, I got it. It was.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. The third one we have is data privacy. And it seems like one where you're like, of course, we try to keep data private.
Yeah.
We actually have federal laws. Do you know what does the federal... FERPA? Love it. Yep.
Do you know what it stands for? I don't know what it stands for.
Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Yeah.
Were you reading that, or did you just have that ready?
I don't know. I had to read it. Sorry. I didn't memorize it. I have some impressed. Of the key words. I know family is in it and privacy. But again, so data privacy, when you're looking at that, we kind of know that it is important to keep our student data private, right? Every student has a legal and ethical obligation to have their data kept private, protected. And so we kind of automatically do that as stewards, as teachers, as staff members and educators. Like you kind of know that in the back of your head.
Yeah.
One of the things I think we sometimes forget is right now, because of our digital age, how easy it is, right, to have data not be protected, not be private, without intending to expose it. It's not like, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not walking around with students' information like on a T-shirt.
Right.
But if I have it in a thumb drive, or I have data on my screen, or, I have it in a drive that's not protected, I'm not thinking of all of those things. I'm just thinking, okay, if I'm not walking around saying, this is Spencer Ziegler's social security number, I'm doing a good job. But, again, it's more than just that. It's how we are collecting it, how we're storing it, how we are reporting it. So, when we are doing reports, sometimes, folks are like, well, I didn't see a score. I didn't see, we have to put an asterisk because too few students will not allow us to report something. Because, again, if we told you the number, you can probably, figure it out, who the students are. And even though I know people say, I'll never even know that, you don't even want to leave it up to chance, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing about data privacy and why it's so important in terms of data literacy needs to know all of those rules to making sure that we're being good stewards of the data.
Yeah, and I like that point they said, how data may be combined to reveal more than what was intended about the source of data. So
I thought it was interesting too.
Yeah, that if there's some data already out there and then there's other data, then it can fit together like a puzzle to accidentally make something identifiable, even though it didn't have ID number, student name, those kind of things.
Correct. And individual stuff,
Yeah. And also just, I think there's just a good opportunity to remind people that using AI, if you're dropping something in a chat bot or something like that, that's not going to be protected. So always be wary what student data you're providing.
Or even staff data or school data. I was taking a class and I was telling one of my classmates when we were using it, I said, we should take off the name of the district that we're talking about, take out the school that we're talking about. Because once you put that into the chatbot, it now becomes part of the bigger metaverse.
Sure. We know technology. Yeah.
Yep. So, if all of those things that we don't think about are now important more so than ever when it comes to foundations for data literacy and why it's important for us to be data literate.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. You got one figured out?
I tend to always do
I
the
had my
middle.
eye on that one too. Okay, she got it. She got it. So next up then is data ethics. So yeah, ethics, they point out, they establish the fundamental and critical principles of appropriate and inappropriate management and use of educational data. And we've talked about this a little bit, but just essentially, how we're using and sharing data. What is the impact of it? And making sure that our decisions are based off of valid, reliable, and relevant data. Because if not, there's other things that might be kind of corrupting the decisions that we make. Are we misinterpreting data and then all of a sudden making unethical decisions that hurt certain groups of students? Are we overfitting or stretching or overgeneralizing some of the data so we're making decisions that the data, we thought there might be a connection, but it is just a loose correlation or something,
right?
Or are we using, going back for that usefulness, are we using data for something that wasn't actually intended to measure and inform, And this goes into conversations we've had over the years about just what was the purpose of this assessment, and making sure we're kind of sticking to that. So that's where my head went with ethics. What about you?
I like that one because I think it was important how they highlighted that we need to be aware of using data that does not cause someone to then have their implicit biases getting in the way of how they see data, understand data, interpret data. And that gave me pause because I'm just like, oh, okay. So it is important for me to be data literate because, again, I have to be thinking of all of these different things because when it comes to interpreting data, right, we are human beings and we have our own filters.
Yeah.
And every one of us have biases, right?
Yep.
So trying to be aware of our implicit biases, not just my own, but what others might have, and being able to be literate enough with our data so to kind of mitigate some of that, right? I thought that was really, really important in that whole data ethics section.
Yep. Okay, I'm up. Let's see, I'm going to try. What did that fell? Okay. Made me nervous with that. Okay, what's next? What's next, Mellisa?
You're going to make it really hard.
2 left. Tower's still standing.
Yeah, but look at the pieces. Okay.
Okay.
Data governance. So our 5th one is data governance. And so they talk about data governance is this formal and comprehensive set of policies and practices designed to ensure the effective management of data within an organization. So again, I think it's important for us to be data literate because you're thinking about data security, the definitions, the collection, the access, all of the things that govern data collection, data use. It's important to have effective data governance because that ties back into the data quality question, right? So those two go hand in hand. So when we talk about, again, these Jenga blocks, you take out one, then you affect the other. I think this is a really good example of how data governance and data quality kind of go hand in hand. And again, back to what you're talking about then, ethics. I mean, they start to then snowball that you can't say, well, then just focus on governance, but not ethics. Just focus on quality, but not...
That's a good point. Inextricably linked.
They all tie into each other. So it's really important, again, in ensuring data literacy that these are the aspects or foundational blocks that we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. And I like this section. It talked about also just when you're thinking about that governance, just the training and support provided to staff members who perform these tasks. So making sure, just like students are not empty vessels that you just pour information in, same thing with staff. So that if you're kind of doing some data literacy training, you can't just say like, oh, I said it in a staff meeting, therefore I assume they got it. You have to find some way to make sure, play a game of Jenga while you're talking about data literacy, capture their attention, whatever it takes. You need to measure and make sure that you are training and supporting properly.
Right. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Oh, it shifted. It moved.
That's not good.
This is one of those kind of questions of whether you have to take the block that you touch first. We didn't establish that. You can go for whatever you want. You can go for whatever you want. Okay, just going for a middle one.
Well, no.
No. She's panicking.
Oh. It is moving. How do you do
Oh, it
this?
might be coming down. It's like the tablecloth. Gotta give it
just
rip.
yuck.
Yep. Ooh, yeah. She got it. It gave it a little wobble.
Ooh.
Very good. Okay, and last one. Let's see if the tower stays up. Okay, this is weird.
Data viz.
Data visualization. So yeah, the process of using a wide range of communication methods, presentation technologies, and media formats to visually reveal the meaning of data to viewers. And like that point, reveal the meaning of data to viewers, because that's what you're doing with visualization.
Yeah.
You're directing their focus. You're directing their eye to a particular takeaway. It's different than just here is all the raw data.
Yes.
Which even still, there is bias in it, anytime you're providing data, as we've kind of talked about throughout this. But I think it's important to be particularly conscious of what messages you're sending when you're using these visualization techniques. So this can be the types of charts that you're using, the use of color, the titles you're putting up. There's a lot of different kind of tips here. And we also have a course in micro-credential on this that we'll drop in the show notes. But I really liked what they said here, that accurate and meaningful data visualization can help improve data literacy significantly because different visual representations of data can increase understanding or lead to misinterpretation.
Correct.
And that's the kind of the key there. There's a Mark Twain quote that I love that's, it ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And
I like that.
I think sometimes visualization can make it seem like there's nothing worse than being confidently wrong.
Yes.
It looks really good. It looks engaging. It's easy for people to take those meanings that you're directing the eyes towards. So you got to be careful. So like an example would be, just a simple example would be when you're messing with the y-axis.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say there are test results or something like that. And there's 80%, 89%, 92%. And you just have this in a kind of basic bar graph or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can kind of visualize that. But now let's say that the y-axis, you're just making it run from 75 to 95 instead of 0 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
What impact is that going to have on those scores, that 80, 89, and 92?
It's going to make the bars look the difference between them look a lot more significant than it really is.
Yeah, so all of a sudden that first one, the 80%, looks atrocious because it's so far down there.
Yep.
When you're actually looking at the full range, it's not there. So
Yep.
just always be very cognizant of the choices you're making. Now, you should visualize because of the fact is that there's a good way to direct people's focus and respect their time and get the ball moving so that we're not just doing that paralysis by analysis,
Right.
but just do so ethically and carefully.
I also think, too, it's important for this field of data visualization because everybody doesn't have to be a data analyst. Like there's some of us, that's our work. We're doing the analyzing of the data, but that's not that level of analysis that we're doing.
Yeah.
You don't need everybody to be doing that, which is why I like this whole reveal meaning. So don't give other people a whole lot of cognitive load where they're doing a lot of the analysis when that's not their skill. Because again, doing data analysis is another set of skills that you need when you're doing to become data literate. So again, if you're going to be using a chart, a graph to represent something, the purpose of it is to reveal meaning, not to have your audience spend time looking like, I wonder what is that saying?
Yeah.
If there is meaning to be had, let's be clear about what that meaning is.
I like that. Yeah, because I don't know if it's some kind of common formative assessment, we would want the PLCs to be doing the ones digging deep into the raw data and then visualizing it for, say, administrators, so administrators have that top.
Yeah.
Likewise, it might be the opposite. Maybe there's some parent survey or something that admin are doing, and then it's up to them to be the ones that kind of like, how can I extract out the meaning so that my teachers can just figure out what to do next?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So
All
that's
right.
the last one.
Uh-huh.
All right, so last poll. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, Jenga. Sorry if that was deafening. I'm going to have to mess with that in editing. Okay, but and that's kind of the thing is that, You can have all of these, but if you pull out the visualization or the governance or the ethics, whatever it might be, everything that you tried so hard to build,
your data literacy house will tumble.
Yes.
All right, so that was a quick overview of just, the beginnings of data literacy, what it is about, and some of the foundational blocks that make up data literacy and why it's important. In our next 2 episodes, we're going to try and explore the data literacy skills needed for different stakeholders in education, right? Spencer sort of hinted on that. And then we are also going to learn about some data literacy professional learning that other stakeholders across the nation tried that, we thought that was interesting that we're going to share with you as well. So before we leave, we'd like to thank Alex Scott for his theme song called Dreamscapes, a student from Ligon Middle School. If you have other comments, questions that you'd like us to talk about in this series around data literacy, you can email us at datalit@wcpss.net. Our website is wcpss.net/datalit. And until next time, goodbye.
Take care. Best 2 out of 3 for Jenga.